ancient texts and traditions have always placed sound at the core of not only our existence, but the existence of the entire universe.
She pressed the string, and the cave answered back with a sound that shouldn't exist. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent 11 years reconstructing an ancient score that was buried underground for 3,000 years.
It's a fascinating location. This is something you would think would only exist in the world of science fiction and fantasy.
And in the 17 minutes it took to play it, 3 people left the chamber in tears. 2 recording devices captured frequencies that engineers still can't explain. And the skeptic who called her work a fraud sat in stunned silence before apologizing for everything he'd ever said. The frequency she unleashed that night wasn't music in any modern sense. It was something the ancient world created and then deliberately hid from human ears. And now, we need to talk about why. The ceramic fragments were first pulled from a limestone cave in southern France in 1974. A team of archaeologists had entered the cave searching for Paleolithic artwork. They found stunning paintings of bison and horses dating back 15,000 years.
The majority of cave art depicts animals that humans would have encountered or hunted during the Ice Age, such as mammoths, horses, lions, aurochs, and deer.
But scattered across the cave floor, half buried in sediment, they also discovered dozens of ceramic shards covered in strange geometric markings. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Henri Beaumont, examined them briefly and cataloged the pieces as decorative pottery fragments. He packed them into crates and shipped them to a university basement in Lyon. For the next 37 years, they collected dust on a storage shelf while the academic world focused on the cave paintings instead. In 2011, a graduate student named Elena Vasquez was hired to digitize the university's archaeological archive. It was tedious work. Thousands of artifacts needed to be photographed and cataloged. When she reached the crates from the 1974 expedition, she almost skipped them entirely. Broken pottery wasn't exactly exciting, but something about the markings caught her attention. They weren't random scratches or simple decoration. They followed a pattern, a deliberate repeating pattern that reminded her of something she'd seen before. Vasquez had studied ancient music notation as an undergraduate. She recognized the structural logic of a musical score when she saw it. Over the next 3 months, she photographed every fragment and began arranging digital copies on her computer screen. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. What emerged was a complete musical composition using a notation system that predated anything in the historical record by at least 1,000 years.
Radiocarbon dating and other methods have revealed most art to be less than 40,000 years old and created by Homo sapiens.
She brought her findings to the department head, Professor Marcus Webb, expecting excitement. Instead, she got laughter. "He told me I was hallucinating patterns," Vasquez recalled in a 2024 interview. "He said graduate students always want to discover something revolutionary, and I was just seeing what I wanted to see. He called it kiln damage and natural weathering." Professor Webb didn't just dismiss her privately. He published a paper in a respected archaeology journal arguing that the ceramic markings were meaningless. He called Vasquez's interpretation an embarrassing example of confirmation bias. The academic community largely agreed with him. Her funding was revoked. Her dissertation committee pressured her to change topics. 2 universities rejected her transfer applications after Webb's paper circulated. But Vasquez refused to abandon the project. She took a job teaching high school music during the day and continued her research at night. Using spectral analysis software and consulting with experts in ancient Middle Eastern musical traditions, she slowly decoded the notation system. What she found was extraordinary. The score contained 22 distinct symbols representing 22 distinct tones. This mattered enormously. Modern Western music divides an octave into 12 notes. It's the system we've used for centuries. But ancient Indian classical music uses a different approach, dividing the octave into 22 microtonal intervals called shrutis. These microtones exist in the spaces between the notes we're familiar with. Our ears aren't trained to hear them. Someone, thousands of years before recorded history, had carved a complete microtonal composition into ceramic and sealed it inside a cave. The question was why?
Tens of thousands of years. This place was discovered by cavers in 1994 and then closed off to the public immediately. Very few people have ever been allowed in, but it's absolutely spectacular.
In the reconstruction effort consumed the next 11 years of Elena Vasquez's life. She faced 3 seemingly impossible challenges. First, she had to fully decode the notation system, which had no known parallel anywhere in archaeology. Second, she needed to determine what instrument the score was written for. Third, she had to build that instrument from materials and techniques authentic to the period. There were entire years where I made no progress, she admitted. My marriage fell apart. I moved 4 times chasing whatever academic position would let me keep working. I taught piano lessons to teenagers just to pay rent. My mother asked me every Christmas when I was going to give up and get a real job, but I couldn't stop. Those markings felt alive to me. They felt urgent, like they were waiting for someone to finally hear them. The breakthrough came in 2019 through an unlikely connection. Dr. James Okonkwo, a specialist in archaeoacoustics at Cambridge University, had been studying the acoustic properties of ancient caves across Europe. His research focused on how prehistoric people might have used natural resonance for ritual purposes. When he mapped the acoustic signature of the French cave where the ceramics were found, he discovered something remarkable. The chamber was tuned to amplify a very specific frequency, 110 Hz. This number keeps appearing at ancient sites worldwide. The underground Hypogeum Temple in Malta resonates at 110 Hz. The Passage Tomb at Newgrange in Ireland resonates at 110 Hz. Stone chambers in the Orkney Islands resonate at 110 Hz. Cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years all built structures that amplified this exact same frequency. Modern neuroscience has begun to explain why. Brain imaging studies conducted at UCLA demonstrated that exposure to 110 Hz produces measurable changes in neural activity. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for language, logical analysis, and our sense of individual self, shows significantly decreased activity. Meanwhile, the temporal lobes, associated with emotional processing and what researchers carefully term spiritual experiences, become highly active. In simple terms, this frequency shifts the brain from thinking mode to feeling mode. It's a neurological doorway to altered consciousness, and ancient builders apparently knew exactly how to construct it. Dr. Okonkwo contacted Vasquez after reading about her ceramic score research in an obscure academic newsletter. Their collaboration changed everything. The cave wasn't just a storage location, Okonkwo explained in a joint interview. It was purpose-built as an acoustic chamber. The score wasn't hidden there randomly. It was written specifically for that space. The music and the architecture were designed as a single integrated system. Together, they reconstructed a 9-stringed lyre based on instrument fragments found at the same archaeological site. The tuning required months of adjustment to produce the 22 microtones indicated in the score. By early 2024, they were finally ready to attempt a complete performance. The plan was to play the score inside the original cave.
To play the instrument that is utilizing our gentle earth, it's like you are becoming one with the instrument in a very true way. You just sit and go.
Using the natural acoustics the ancient composers had intended, French authorities granted special access. Recording equipment was arranged, and after some negotiation, Professor Marcus Webb agreed to attend as an observer. "I wanted to be there when it failed," Webb later admitted. "I was certain nothing significant would happen. I thought I'd finally have proof that the whole project was fantasy." In the performance, the first complete performance took place on March 15, 2024, starting at 9:47 p.m. local time. 6 people were present in the cave chamber. Dr. Vasquez would perform. Dr. Okonkwo managed the acoustic monitoring. Dr. Sarah Chin, a neuroscientist from Stanford, attached biosensors to each participant to track physiological responses in real time. 2 audio engineers, Mark Reeves and David Holbrook, operated recording equipment. Professor Webb sat against the cave wall with his arms crossed, waiting to be vindicated. The cave was cold and completely dark except for carefully positioned LED panels. The ancient paintings watched from the walls. 15,000 years of silence pressed down on the chamber.
Hundreds of images adorn the walls. They're surprisingly sophisticated, But these were painted 35,000 years ago by early humans.
Vasquez lifted the reconstructed lyre. She positioned her fingers on the strings. She took a breath, and she played the first note. The sound that emerged was nothing anyone expected. It didn't simply fill the cave, it became the cave. The tone resonated from the stone itself, reflecting and amplifying until the air felt thick with vibration. The biosensors immediately registered changes. Within 30 seconds, all 6 heartbeats had synchronized to the same rhythm. Skin conductance spiked across the board. I felt it in my teeth first, Okonkwo recalled, then in my sternum. It was like standing inside a bell the size of a building. The sound wasn't coming from the instrument anymore. It was coming from everywhere. Vasquez moved through the first movement of the score. The 22 microtones created patterns that Western ears found deeply unfamiliar and strangely compelling. Harmonics built on harmonics. The cave walls added natural reverb that extended each note into the next. Audio engineer Mark Reeves later described it as hearing music in 3 dimensions for the first time. "I've recorded orchestras, rock concerts, electronic shows," Reeves said. "Nothing prepared me for this. The sound had weight. You could feel it pushing against your chest, and the shadows on the walls started to move. I know how crazy that sounds, but I watched a painting of a bison look like it was breathing. Multiple people saw the same thing. Then the second movement began, and everything changed. The frequency dropped. It moved below 80 hertz, then below 50, then below the 20 hertz threshold of human hearing. The notes became infrasound, vibrations too low for ears to detect, but powerful enough to affect the body directly. Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to break. She began crying, not sobbing, but tears streaming silently down her face. Her biosensor showed her prefrontal cortex activity had dropped by nearly 40%. The analytical part of her brain was essentially shutting down, while her emotional centers flooded with activity. "I had to leave," Chen said in a follow-up interview. "I wasn't sad. I wasn't scared. Every emotion I'd ever suppressed came rushing up at once. Grief from my father's death 10 years ago. Joy from moments I'd forgotten. It was too much to process. I couldn't stay in there." She walked out of the chamber at the 11-minute mark and sat in the entrance tunnel until the performance ended. David Holbrook, the second audio engineer, experienced something different. He reported pressure building behind his eyes, then a sense that the cave walls were expanding outward, becoming vast and cathedral-like. His notes from that evening describe feeling watched by something very old that wasn't hostile but wasn't exactly friendly either. Professor Webb didn't move. He sat against the stone wall with tears running down his face, staring at nothing. His biosensor data showed the most extreme prefrontal suppression of anyone present. The part of his brain that had spent years constructing arguments against this research had gone quiet. Whatever remained was experiencing the music without intellectual defense. The performance lasted 23 minutes. When the final note faded, nobody spoke. The only sound was breathing and the subtle hum of the recording equipment. Webb's first words came nearly an hour later. He looked at Vasquez and said, "I'm sorry, I was wrong about everything. I don't understand what just happened, but I was completely wrong." In the aftermath, the weeks following the performance revealed effects that nobody anticipated. All 6 participants reported lasting changes, though the nature varied from person to person. Dr. Chen experienced vivid, unusually coherent dreams for the next 3 months. She described them as feeling like messages rather than random neural activity, though she was careful to frame this as subjective experience rather than scientific claim. She's currently designing a research study to examine the dream patterns of people exposed to infrasound frequencies.
They'd get out hunting and stuff to kill squirrels and rabbits for us to have something to eat, and we were always proud of it.
Dr. Okonkwo reported a fundamental shift in his baseline anxiety level. He had struggled with chronic worry for most of his adult life. After the performance, it simply stopped. "I'm not claiming the music cured me," he clarified, "but something changed neurologically. My therapist noticed it before I mentioned anything about the cave. She asked what I'd been doing differently." Mark Reeves quit his job in commercial audio engineering 2 months after the performance. He enrolled in a music therapy certification program and now works with trauma patients using carefully calibrated sound frequencies. He credits the cave experience with completely reorienting his career. David Holbrook has been less willing to discuss his experience publicly, saying only that it changed his understanding of what sound can do and that he's still processing the implications. Professor Webb underwent the most dramatic transformation. He published a full retraction of his earlier criticisms and wrote a public apology to Dr. Vasquez that circulated widely in academic circles. He's now one of the most vocal advocates for archaeoacoustic research funding. "We've spent over a century treating ancient artifacts as silent objects," he wrote in a widely shared essay. "We photograph them, measure them, carbon date them. We forgot that the ancient world was alive with sound."
So it seems that no matter where we go or what time period, there's a belief that sound was fundamental to creation.
This score proves that prehistoric people understood acoustic physics in ways we're only beginning to recover. But it was Dr. Vasquez herself who experienced the most persistent effects. In the days following the performance, she began hearing fragments of the melody playing continuously in her mind. This wasn't ordinary memory recall. She described it as reception, as if the music was still happening somewhere and she was picking up the signal. Brain scans conducted at Stanford showed unusual activity in her auditory cortex, even in complete silence. The patterns didn't match tinnitus or any known auditory processing disorder. They appeared to be unique. "It's not unpleasant," Vasquez said in a June 2024 interview. "It's like carrying a song that keeps revealing new layers the more you listen. Some days it's louder than others. I've learned to live with it. Sometimes I think it's still teaching me something, still working on some part of my brain that needed to wake up." The scientific analysis of the surviving recordings proved equally puzzling. The audio captured frequencies spanning from 7 Hz at the lowest to over 18,000 Hz at the upper limit of human perception. The 7 Hz infrasound explains some of the physical reactions. Research has established that frequencies around 7 Hz can affect the resonant frequency of the human eyeball, causing visual disturbances. This likely accounts for the moving paintings that multiple observers reported. But the recordings also contained anomalies. There were measurable gaps where equipment registered sound pressure waves but captured no actual audio content. Something was vibrating the air that the microphones couldn't translate into recordable signal. "We designed our recording technology for human hearing ranges," Okonkwo explained. "But this music wasn't designed for human ears. Parts of it exist in frequency ranges we don't have equipment to capture. The ancient composers included sounds that were never meant to be consciously heard, only felt by the body." Acoustic analysis of the cave itself revealed one final mystery. Readings taken 6 months after the performance showed that the resonant properties of the chamber had shifted slightly. The stone appeared to have been subtly retuned by the music that passed through it. No one has been able to explain how this is possible. What comes next? The ceramic score is now housed in a climate-controlled, secure facility at Cambridge University. Access requires special authorization. Dr. Vasquez has performed the complete piece twice more under controlled laboratory conditions, but never again in the original cave. Both subsequent performances produced similar effects in listeners, though participants described the intensity as somewhat diminished outside the acoustic environment the music was designed for. A formal research program has been established to study the score's properties and effects. The early findings are compelling. 22-tone microtonal system creates acoustic interference patterns that don't occur in standard 12-tone music. These patterns appear to synchronize brainwave activity across multiple listeners in ways that researchers are still working to understand. The implications for music therapy, treatment of anxiety disorders, and perhaps even neurological rehabilitation are being carefully explored. The cave site in southern France has been sealed to public access. French cultural authorities cited preservation concerns, but Dr. Okonkwo believes there's another factor at play. "They're being cautious, and I understand why," he said. "We don't fully understand what this music does to people. The ancient composers mark certain passages of the score with symbols we haven't decoded yet. They look like warnings. Until we know what those warnings say, some caution is appropriate." Dr. Vasquez continues her research. Secondary ceramic fragments from the same site may contain additional compositions. She's also investigating connections between the French score and acoustic features found at other prehistoric sites across Europe. A pattern is emerging that suggests ancient people possessed sophisticated knowledge of sound manipulation that was deliberately encoded and hidden. This wasn't entertainment, Vasquez said in her most recent public lecture. This was technology, acoustic technology designed to alter human consciousness in specific, predictable ways. The people who created it understood the brain at a level we're only now catching up to with modern neuroscience. They buried this underground intentionally. They marked it with warning symbols. And 3,000 years later, we dug it up and played it anyway. The melody continues to echo in her mind. The intensity fluctuates but never fully fades. Sometimes I wonder if the music is finished with me, she said in a recent interview, or if I'm still being changed by something that was set in motion thousands of years ago. Maybe that's the real purpose of these frequencies, not just to create a momentary experience, but to start a process that continues long after the last note stops. The ceramic fragments sit in their controlled environment in Cambridge, covered in markings that took 37 years to notice and 11 more to decode. There are still sections of the score that haven't been performed, passages marked with those untranslated warning symbols that no one has been willing to play yet. Vasquez says she'll attempt them eventually, but not yet. We need to understand what we've already released into the world first, she said. Then we can talk about going deeper. The cave remains sealed. The 15,000-year-old paintings still watch from the walls in darkness. And somewhere in that silence, the stone still hums at 110 hertz, holding the memory of frequencies that were never meant for human ears, waiting for the next person who decides they need to hear what shouldn't be heard.